Okay, welcome to Supercharge with Digital Marketer, the bi-weekly podcast where we discuss everything related to entrepreneurship and how marketing is important for your success in business venture. I'm your host and also the founder of Marketer, KRYSTAL, and with me is my co-host and also my co-founder, KAZUKI. In today's episode, we'll be breaking down the topic of navigating culture and business, Vietnamese traditions, and modern entrepreneurship. It is our privilege to sit down with Johnny, founder of VietQ, and try to learn from his story and his experience. So, hi Johnny, thank you so much for being here with us today. So, just to get started, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what's your journey of becoming an entrepreneur?
Absolutely. Well, thank you to you both for having me on your show. I've been listening to you guys, so definitely excited to talk about my journey. So, a little bit about
Yeah,
myself.
super
I am
exciting.
a creator, music creator specifically. I've been trained in the music arts since I was even way before my teens. And I thought that was going to be my career. I thought music, in terms of singing and performing on stage, was going to be my path. But I ended up actually doing. I did that, but I ended up doing a lot more. I got more fascinated actually with the behind the scenes. So such as working more in the production side. I've had many not careers, but I have many opportunities to work in live production, both at pageants, concerts, a range of variety shows. One that I'm going to be talking a lot more in particular is a variety program for the Vietnamese diaspora community, where I got to travel to many parts of the world outside of Little Saigon, California, to explore these Vietnamese communities. So, and then for a good part of my late 20s, that was kind of where my true entrepreneur journey began. I have to thank my first and foremost my wife for helping me on this journey, because as an entertainer and working in production, it gave me the ability to travel all around the world. However, we were in a long distance relationship. She was in Northern California, I was in Southern California, and she's like, if we're gonna take this relationship to the next level, you gotta stay still and do one thing. So ended up that summer I got to work with somebody who is now also my brother-in-law, but he's a serial entrepreneur by full definition. And I was able to learn how to identify opportunities in businesses, learn how to operate them, and then also learn how to build teams as they start generating revenue. So I got really fascinated with the world of startups, and kind of gave up that whole world of entertainment for a bit, and then my journey in about 2018, 2019 was kind of where it gets most interesting, because I started finding out more about creating a digital media platform that specifically tells a story for the next generation, Gen Zs, for the Vietnamese communities, but specifically the Vietnamese diaspora, which to most Vietnamese speakers, the term VietQ stands for overseas Vietnamese. So I expand on that a lot through the different types of content that I produce and talk about.
Wow, that's super exciting. Like having you on board for this podcast really means a lot to us, especially you have your backgrounds in startups, and not only that, you have the many years of experiences. So my second question is, what sets your media company VQ apart from others in the industry? Like, can you give us more details of how different they are from compared to the other companies? And we'd love to know a little bit more of how VietQ is kind of serving the community as well.
So to to answer that question, I want to share about my background in media. So uh, while I worked in live production, I also had the opportunity to work as a producer for a TV station for the Vietnamese community here in America. Um, Back in 2009, there was a TV station by the name of VHN, which stands for Việt Hải Ngoại, Vietnamese living abroad. And they were looking for a younger producer to kind of draw content for the next generation. At that time, I learned how to create long form content, and I also learned how to do segment production, segment pieces such as news pieces. They had me be a news anchor one time, which was not something I really like doing. I'm a guy that likes to go out on the field. I like doing very exciting type of content, and doing the news was just not for me. So when I took a break from entertainment and media, I was researching how do you reach out to the finding content for English speaking Vietnamese and or for the next generation. I couldn't find anything. I found Instagram accounts that did like memes and funny content and a lot of food content, which shows yes, Vietnamese have amazing food.
Definitely.
But
One
we're
of the
more than
best,
just food,
isn't it?
right? It's I'm happy to see there were so many pho memes and banh mi's and all that and cafe sodas and iced coffees, but there's a lot more to it. So I went on a journey first. Actually, I called it VietQ Media, but I ended up actually building more of a database and a network. I specifically started with musicians and artists because that's my passion. I was curious to know what kind of talents were out there, and then I was able to expand that into athletes and then creators and so forth. And then all of a sudden, I find this like a whole field of amazing of talent. And I was just starting. I started VietQ Media actually more from I just curated the content because I was like, where can I put all this in one place? So I opened up my Instagram account, and essentially that's what I was pushing out, whether it was original content or just content that I found and I reshared it and whatnot. So that was kind of the origin story of VietQ Media. But given that, as you can see, my background also comes very heavy in creating experiences through many different mediums, I kind of leaned more into creating events. So event marketing is probably one of the areas that I feel is where we set ourselves apart. And beyond that, nobody really is just focusing on connecting all the diaspora communities. I talked about that in the music company that I was a part of. There's Canadian talent that I also found. European talent that I found in Australian. So within all that, there was building information and content for all that was where things are organically leading to. But in order to truly be a media company, you got to also have brands that want to support and be interested in that. And that's where the journey has this year has really begun. I had the fortunate opportunity to work with one of the largest, or actually the only Vietnamese car maker in the world. And I got to do, they came to me exactly for those reasons, is we want to get into the Little Saigon community. You can see that jacket in the back. And why couldn't they hire a traditional agency? Well, for those who don't know, and for the listeners out there, the Vietnamese American Little Saigon community is a very complicated community. Because of this community has the largest community of displacement, of Vietnamese displacement, right? So and so with sometimes there's still a lot of trauma that has still to this day, 40 plus years later, there's still a lot of trauma as it relates to anything that comes from the country of Vietnam. And so with the car brand from Vietnam, there are still some limited views that people feel that they have a political motive um, to want to come here. So, and which is far and far from the truth, right? So there's a so they reached out to me to help them bridge that conversation. So I created a pop-up event for them in Little Saigon for them to test it out, and the response was very overwhelming in terms of what we were able to get the feedback from. So from there, I was able to get a lot of get access to as far up as the global CEO. I got to meet her earlier this year at CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, which was, to be honest, quite a highlight for me to be able to be a guest for that company and be able to meet somebody of that level was great. So to kind of wrap up this portion, what makes VietQ Media different is that we are now kind of becoming a place where we can help with profiling these very different micro Vietnamese communities, and then try to be their, essentially kind of become their research arm, and build a very personalized marketing strategy for these brands.
Yeah, that is amazing to hear. Yeah, for me, with my because I'm a Vietnamese myself, I would be very proud to work with like a Vietnamese car manufacturer in the U.S. Especially, yeah, there's the only one in the Vietnamese car manufacturer in the U.S. at the moment. So yeah, very proud of that, and I'm very happy that VietQ is able to like bring the bring the Vietnamese community is to the different level. Yeah. So on top of that, how do you stay on top of the constantly evolving media landscape?
Tough. Well, first and foremost, I would say I I surround myself with a lot of young, bright, creative talent. The landscape's always is evolving. Traditional media is fastly like the content um, the content consumption patterns have changed. So we all know, especially last year, people's attention span has shortened. There's been a lot of studies about this. Long form YouTube videos or anything is that's above almost 2 to 3 minutes. If you can get your point across within 15 to 30 seconds, you're not gonna have engagement. So I think with the rising platforms like TikTok and also all the major video platforms like YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, all switching over to short form, it is very, very important to really understand why short form how to be effective doing short form. A lot of it is also text. There's an editing style that one must have to really understand. Captions is extremely effective. What I mean by captions is, like for instance, I'm talking right now. The way short form works is you'll see while I'm talking my transcript, which I think is kind of cool. But it's because not all the time people are actually even having their headphones on. That's another thing. When you're watching short form, people are in this behavior of scrolling. So it's visually, you got to do all these different things to get them to stop, and you have 5 seconds to get them to stop. So thankfully, I had while I was working at my startup, one of the marketing discipline that I learned quite extensively was a discipline called performance marketing. So performance marketing is one of the most effective, in my opinion, one of the most effective forms of marketing, and it was used in television quite often in what we know as infomercials. So just for everyone to know, with infomercials, the whole goal is to really get people to feel like you're missing. You have a wonderful opportunity to present, that you're gonna get a tremendous amount of value. But then if you don't act now, like really act now, that opportunity is gonna go away. So I was able. So with this form of short forms kind of being that at the moment, I feel we are seeing a lot of essentially we're seeing a lot of performance marketing strategies that are being applied to content right at the moment. So I think mainly to kind of keep up to date with the growing landscape of digital marketing or platforms, my biggest advice that I tend to tell people is, one, if you're a brand, be an authentic brand, and tell your story across tell your story across all platforms. Do not just be a one platform type media. So newsletters are still effective, honestly. Podcast is extremely effective. So I encourage thought leaders and people in different departments in their companies to create something like a podcast. There's still a lot of room to grow, and of course have companies. I encourage you to also hire young creative minds, because a lot of the young creative minds they grew up in this environment, and it's going to be a lot less of a learning curve for them to adopt the consumer behavior and the editing style. For example, for VietQ, my background, as I said, I came from television. My editing style is long form. So my producer now, he's a 26-year-old who looks at my content and goes, "You are keeping way too much into the video." So he knows how to shoot effectively and know exactly how to edit. And I can't edit like him because I was just conditioned and trained a certain way. So and I just recognize and acknowledge that. So I think that for companies, please, it's really important to not only hire but empower young creatives, because it's a different game, guys. A different game.
I really love that you brought up the whole concept of short form contents, because I cannot believe how many hours we spend on TikToks. Like, I don't know about you, Johnny, but sometimes, like, before going to bed, I grab my phone and no reason I'm swiping right, well, up and down.
Well, and it's not even just TikTok. I would say Facebook just recently reported, and we all know. I mean, you guys are much younger than I am. Like, Facebook for Gen Z specifically, it was dead. Like, new users to active users, but ever since they adopted the short form videos, I think end of Q4, they nearly doubled their user reach. Wow. And Facebook as a whole is bigger globally than it is in the United States, and but because of video, purely because of short term video, it has brought people back to the platform, and I think they were envious of TikTok for doing that. I think they were hoping that they were going to be the case, but but short form. I mean, YouTube is another good example where their videos is drastically changed, and it's not just. And there's so many different tools that I think YouTube has been able to create outside of all these other platforms, because you can now take short clips from your long form. And then if somebody wants to get to know more about the content, you just go, you have it linked back up to your primary one. So for a guy like me who likes to talk for an hour, I can have somebody on my team do all these short clips and get micro commercials of things that that I like to ramble on.
No, I mean it's really true. Like, the power of short form contents has been really disrupting the market, and not only just the quality of the contents, but it has been the revolution for SEO type of contents. Like, for example, my wife was actually telling me the other day, like, she finds all the recipes or the things that she needs to find answers to on short form content, which is crazy. And I really love that you touched upon the performance marketing. So that actually brings to the fourth questions from us, which is, can you please share us any updates? Any notable projects or campaign that your company has recently worked on?
So I would say in terms of currently most of my upcoming projects for VQ is going to be based on helping brands build a community. So let me expand on that. And this is a hot topic that people will be searching a lot about because it's community it, is extremely important for to build loyalty, to build uh, a advocates. That's another actually another good reason why you build communities, and and then also ownership of the brand. Right, when you have a that level of investment into into really hearing what the community is going to what they have to say, your business will have that long term um, payback or long term value of it. Like, for example, I'm going to use K-pop as a good example of this community. Why? And this has been talked about mainly in a lot in music. Why has K-pop have exceeded uh, all levels in terms of, 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 of growth compared to European pop or Western pop? Very simple, very very simple. They fully understand the fan culture, and so fan culture to a brand is also like is the community, right? They have they understand that the fans they're nothing without their fan base, um, and so because the fan base, and I got to be on the receiving end of this when I was in the live production business. One of the biggest shows I've done back in that day was I got to do a K-pop show in Los Angeles for 6,500 people, and they the fan base that followed us to the show knew who I was, knew where we try to trick them to so they don't find out where the artist is staying, but they found out. I had to think that much further ahead. But why I'm sharing this story is that their fan base are so obsessive, and people that are anti the try to bully them or whatever. They have their fan base come and defend them as well. So with that being said, the power of fan base is because it's a 360 experience. You have full investment from people who are supporters of the fan and ownership. So community is extremely important because whether you are have one product or you have multiple products or you have products, if you have a community that support that is with you and you are there for them, it's gonna uh, be a 10x return. So one of the things that VQ is doing is, as I was saying earlier, is VQ is kind of defining all these different micro communities within the Vietnamese diaspora, and from there, I'm doing that with the intention of these brands that are trying to tap into, let's say, Gen Z collegiate, like the Gen Zs in from California or whatever, like whatever the specific profile is, I can pair that up with the community that I'm building.
Amazing. So I believe that building a community is very essential for the business, especially nowadays, and especially in 2023 too, where because the market is very saturated, and we really need to like stand out from everyone to do marketing. And building a community is one of the essential part of like to build a community for your product, as well as like building a customer base. Yeah. So talking about that, is there any challenge that you're facing right now for building community, and how do you plan to overcome it?
Plenty of challenges. When I'll say the first was when I started this journey, I thought I was going to try to grab a pretty wide range, a wide age range, right? I thought I can also even grab as far as like in the 60s and plus because I thought I came in with this naiveness that all Vietnamese Americans, we can all kind of come together um, under the same ethnicity and heritage. That's far from the reality. So what I'm and also another challenge is year after year, there's actually a lot more uh, Vietnamese nationals or Vietnamese that were born in Vietnam now, kind of making the move over to America or to Canada. So they their understanding of Vietnamese Americans are very different. They don't quite understand some of the trauma or the healing that still needs to be had with the American born Vietnamese. Like for myself, I grew up only knowing actually, in fact, just one flag that the Vietnamese Americans acknowledge. But when you bring up the national flag, which the whole world recognizes, it is it becomes a very non becomes a very hard topic to unpack because you immediately have this pre charge emotions or ideas behind it. So if I'm a Vietnamese American and I don't and I speak about the national flag in a unifying way, the immediate response is you must be influenced by the political party, right? And that's just it's since it's it's difficult to navigate through that. So that's kind of one of the challenges that I do want to highlight. Number two is most Vietnamese Americans, let's say like in college or the Gen Zs, don't really have quite much of an interest beyond learning some of the historical or some of the or even wanting to know other products or brands that are made by Vietnamese Americans themselves because they are there's not a strong media that kind of puts that focus on support. It's like the whole campaign behind like support small businesses, support local. There's not that same level of passion or interest in supporting Vietnamese American brands because they're always going to be actually hyper more not sensitive, more critical of Vietnamese American brands because they're like, well, you're not as good as yada yada, and we're like, well, how can we ever be that good if you're not even going to give us a shot? You're going to criticize me off the bat. So anybody, it's quite it's an interesting like I for instance I fit the profile of if you are a Vietnamese American or Vietnamese, I'm going to support you. And I found out very quickly that I'm actually more in the minority category than I am in the majority. Most people can either it's not enough for them to to care, or it's or they're just hypercritical. They're like, you should be even that much better. And like, wow, So it's been interesting to say the least. But one of the things how I'm able to overcome this is I'm trying to just the way that I'm trying to overcome this is I'm trying to highlight the best representation of whatever I'm promoting. So if it's musicians, I used to be my mindset was if you're trying the arts, I'm going to support you. My attitude now in 2023 is you got to be exceptional. And I'm going to tell you offhand first how to improve. And if you want to take if you want to do this to a higher degree, you're going to have to be ready for what for what's to come and the criticism that is. So I'm only so I guess to summarize, I'm only focusing on brands that really has the financial resources and the dedication of and leadership to to push through. And same thing with entertainers and musicians and actors. They have to be obsessive about their craft, and if they're not, and just like as you guys are both in the marketing field, if you don't continue to evolve, the next person that's coming out of college will continue to be much better. So don't get comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. Like one of the things that we say in Marcus as well is that things change, but brands should too. And I think that's something that we also need to learn as well as the market changes. And I mean, I gotta be honest, like the things are really moving quickly since the pandemic, and so many new companies formed. Things are really changing because of the market, and I'm really, you know, it's really challenging. I totally agree on that. Especially don't get comfortable and trying to be more pivot, try and think new things and to see what works and whatnot. So it's really cool that you mentioned that.
I I I will never always I'm always going to be a student, and but I'm not going to be the best at that one thing. But I know how to identify and also know when to recognize this is beyond my current scope, right? So partner, find talent.
Amazing. Well, this kind of actually leads into the next question, which is looking to the future. What are your goals and vision for the for the growth and the success of your media company, VietQ?
Um, I'm so first for to expand on community building. Um, I'm going. I'm making a bold prediction that I am going to primarily be focusing on. Uh, I'm going to be focusing primarily on the Gen Zs in terms of as building that audience and listening to really what they want. Because from a from a content perspective, I know they like to laugh. That's why these meme sites are really popular. I know they like to dance. I've been going on campus and checking out that, but I'm also seeing this growing trend of them feeling somewhat more proud of their cultural identity. For example, during Lunar New Year in 2023, I was really I guess shocked. I guess shocked because I saw I'm seeing going to all the different Lunar New Year festivals, whether it's temple, church, or and just get-togethers. I started seeing both men and women, teenagers and kids, wear the traditional ao dai. Now, growing up when I was in college, you would never see me caught dead wearing an ao dai, and it was maybe because I tried so hard. Growing up in the 90s, all we cared about was trying to assimilate and fit into the American culture, that wearing something that clearly identifies us as Asian American or Vietnamese American, we felt embarrassed by, and I can honestly say that was the case. So what I found this year, I just saw, and not only was it the younger teenagers and young adults, but a lot more guys closer to my age. I'm 41, and we were all wearing it proudly, and I think there's this sense of people kind of going back to, hey, we have two identities, that we are American as well as Vietnamese. So I like to so my hypothesis is that there's this pride that I feel they're starting to, this next generation is interested in, but I also think that there's a lot more that work that needs to be done from an academic level. There's a lot of history that I think a lot of young young adults are not quite briefed on, because it's for most of the listeners, just like the people that grew up here in America, our Vietnamese history ends essentially after 1975. So most history after that, like from 75 on up, most of us here in America, we when the war ended, most Vietnamese Americans only recognized it up until that point. So it's usually actually only you learn it not in literature. You kind of learn it from your just whatever your aunties, uncles, and your parents share with you, and from that generation, they didn't share much, guys. So just most people that did come over here during that displacement when the fall of Saigon happened, um, it was very traumatic for anybody you can only imagine. There's been a couple other ethnic groups that went through something similar. The Afghanis just went through something very similar to the Vietnamese, where a lot of them had to leave because of government change, right? And imagine telling them, hey, let's talk about the home country. Most of them don't want to think about that or expand on that. So their kids don't really get to learn everything and what it means to be Vietnamese. I was always challenged with, hey, what are you doing to be more Vietnamese? I'm like, I don't know, like eat more pho, like it's like we there's so much to there's still much more knowledge to kind of gain before you can get better insight. So what I encourage a lot of younger people to do at this very moment also is I encourage them to make a trip back to Vietnam once, for tourism sake, and also just to you I feel the only way for you to really understand what being Vietnamese is, go into a country where everyone's Vietnamese. Like that's and I think from there, once I encourage a lot more younger folks to go back, or even folks my age who've never been back to the country, I think that's when this next journey of is going to be interesting, because that's when someone like me in media is able to make an impact, because then creators will start creating content that will have the representation of help further define this particular very this topic, right? So I think it's going to be the challenge. The challenge is trying to navigate this bridging the gap message without being labeled, and what I've been labeled as, a communist sympathizer. In 2023, that is still used against someone like me who is trying to essentially have people think a different way, learn about, go to the country, and see for yourself, and then come back and bring your two cultures together.
Yeah, amazing. I believe so too. And I see there's a growing trend of people, like Vietnamese people over here, starting to be proud of who they are, and I really appreciate it as well. And with that, let's go to the last question. Do you have any advice for business leader out there that want to level up their marketing strategy?
Yeah, work with a company like you guys. um, that's one. So yes, absolutely. I think with marketing, um, for small businesses, I mean, don't be afraid to actually look for help outside of yeah, outside of your circle, right? Like one of the most common things that I see, especially with small mom and pops, are are small, like legal or real estate professionals, is they usually tend to hire their cousin or their daughter, and they put them in big positions like social media manager, right? I'm sorry, social media manager is a very big role now. It is a very key role because social media has become much more impactful than traditional media. So having somebody who posts social media for their own content, for their personal content, is very different for a business. So I think that one of the things that a lot of business owners have to do is realize that if they're good at selling something, stick to that. But look towards hiring young companies to and outsource your marketing. There's a marketing. I feel there's a lot of great business models where you're utilizing the vision and creativity from the American side, but then you can also have a lot of the technical work being outsourced to countries that are growing as well. Vietnam, South America, as well as we all know, like in India, they have a lot of phenomenal talent as well. So I think that working with small marketing companies is going to be very helpful. And also another advice that I give to small businesses is video and being ready to be to be content be ready to not produce content but be content conscious of, like, we live in a very visual and value driven society right now. So like if your brand or your company does not have any kind of visibility or any kind of like professional pictures, like if you don't have even a clean website, like basics. So go to the basics of these things and make sure you have, and I think back in the early 2000s, making a website was much more complicated. Today, there's so many there's ones you can do yourself, which is cool to learn, but I encourage having still a professional team do it. But or like there's a or hire an agency. I'm a big believer in just collaborating and partnering with an agency, because an agency will actually continue to grow with you. So I feel don't be lazy about it, and it will pay off for itself, because branding, I feel branding is everything in going into 2023, and building building that relationship with your customer base is equally as important.
Awesome, Johnny. Thank you so much for all your experience and knowledge that you have shared with us. It's truly amazing, and we cannot be how grateful we are to have you and to be hosting you for our podcast. But however, that brings us to the end of our episode. Once again, thank you so much, Johnny, for joining us today. We're going to be if you want to learn more about Johnny and his businesses, we're going to be putting some links and description in our podcast descriptions. So please go and check it out. And once again, we hope this episode was really beneficial for you. And as always, thank you so much for listening to Supercharged with Digital Marketer. And if you enjoy our show, please follow or rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We're also available on Google and Amazon Music as well. And be sure to come back for another episode for a next discussion. And until then, this is KAZUKI. I'm the co-host of this podcast, and also alongside with me, KRYSTAL. And don't forget, don't stop and keep believing. See you next time.